If you're over 60 and feel tired after meals, listen carefully. Doctors call it aging, but new science shows it's actually a hidden eating mistake, and fixing it can make your body feel lighter and stronger within weeks. Most people don't feel old because they've reached a certain birthday. They feel old because they are feeding an aging body with the exact same eating strategy they used when they were 40. And that quiet mismatch is devastating the body from the inside out. I've watched this pattern repeat itself for decades. People assume their fatigue, belly fat, constipation, muscle weakness, and loss of stamina are separate problems. They chase supplements for energy, laxatives for digestion, creams for joints, and pills for blood sugar. But beneath all of it is one silent shared cause. The body's internal machinery has changed, yet the fuel going in has not. As Peter Attia often explains, metabolism doesn't suddenly break with age. It becomes more selective. Like aging industrial equipment, it still works, but only if the inputs are precise, high quality, and intentional. Feed it the wrong materials, and the output collapses. Here is the uncomfortable truth nobody sits down to explain. After 60, your body is no longer forgiving. When you eat the wrong balance of foods, it doesn't simply store a little extra fat or bounce back the next day. It begins to cannibalize itself. Muscle tissue is quietly dismantled for energy. Blood sugar spikes higher and stays elevated longer. Digestion slows, inflammation simmers, and the nervous system shifts into a constant low-grade stress response. You don't feel sick enough to see a doctor, but you don't feel alive either. You feel worn down, dull, and older than you should. What makes this so tragic is that most people think they're doing the right thing. They eat smaller portions. They snack lightly. They avoid big meals. And yet their plates are still built around refined carbohydrates, breads, crackers, pasta, cereals, and ultra-processed convenience foods. The calories are there, but the biological signals are missing. The body is being told to store, not rebuild. To survive, not thrive. This is why you can eat less than you did years ago and still gain fat, lose strength, and feel exhausted. The problem was never quantity alone. It was structure. I need you to understand this deeply, because it's the turning point. Feeling young again after 60 is not about willpower. It's not about starving yourself, counting every calorie, or following some extreme diet trend. It's about giving your aging physiology what it now requires at the level of each meal. When that shift happens, something remarkable occurs. Energy stabilizes, muscles respond again, digestion improves, the body feels lighter, steadier, more cooperative. People describe it as feeling alive again, not because they reversed time, but because they finally stopped fighting their biology. What surprises most people in their 60s and 70s is not how much they eat, but how little it takes to feel depleted. Meals get smaller, appetites soften, and there's a subtle pride in restraint. A bowl of soup here, a slice of toast there. Something quick, something light, something easy. On the surface, it looks sensible. Fewer calories should mean better health, right? But beneath that calm surface, something far more serious is unfolding, because the body is no longer measuring food by volume. It's measuring it by biological usefulness. After 60, muscle tissue becomes stubborn. It no longer responds eagerly to food the way it once did. The scientific term is anabolic resistance, but the lived experience is simpler and harsher. The body stops rebuilding unless it receives a very clear signal. Refined carbohydrates flood the bloodstream with glucose, spike insulin, and then disappear just as quickly. They deliver energy without instruction. No message to preserve muscle. No command to repair tissue. No support for strength or balance. The calories arrive, but the body doesn't know what to do with them except store or burn them inefficiently. This is where the quiet damage begins. Muscle protein synthesis, the process that keeps you strong enough to stand up, climb stairs, and carry groceries, fails to activate. Instead, the body looks inward for resources. It starts breaking down existing muscle to meet basic energy needs. Sarcopenia doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't come with pain or dramatic symptoms. It shows up as weaker legs, slower walking, poorer balance, and fatigue that doesn't match the effort of the day. Many people assume this is just aging. It isn't. It's underfeeding the very tissue that keeps you independent. A simple image captures this perfectly. Imagine trying to pay your monthly bills with coupons. There's plenty of paper, plenty of activity, But no real value is being exchanged. Refined, ultra-processed foods function the same way in the aging body. They take up space on the plate, create the illusion of nourishment, and yet fail to deliver the amino acids and structural materials the body is desperately asking for. The machinery is running, but it's being paid with the wrong currency. I've seen this play out countless times. A man in his early 70s living alone, proud of how little he eats. Toast in the morning, soup at lunch, a small soft dinner. He wasn't overeating, he wasn't careless. But day by day his muscles were being quietly starved. His strength faded not because he ate too much, but because what he ate never gave his body permission to maintain itself. That distinction changes everything. This is the hidden danger of centering meals around ultra-processed anchors. Foods with long ingredient lists, refined flours, and added sugars are convenient, familiar, and culturally comforting. Yet in an aging body, they crowd out what matters most. They become the foundation of the meal instead of the occasional accent. Over time, the question is no longer how many calories are consumed, but whether the plate contains anything capable of signaling strength, repair, and resilience. Once this pattern is seen clearly, a powerful realization emerges. The problem was never eating less, the problem was eating lighter in the wrong way. The body after 60 does not need emptiness, it needs precision. And until that shift happens, no amount of portion control will stop the slow erosion of strength that so many people mistake for inevitable aging. As the body ages, something subtle but profound changes in how it interprets food. Protein, once effortlessly utilized, now has to speak louder to be heard. Many older adults drift into a pattern where protein appears mainly at dinner, almost as a reward at the end of the day, while earlier meals are built around softer, lighter foods that feel easier to digest. There's an unspoken belief that protein is heavy, taxing, or somehow excessive. Yet the aging body interprets this absence not as kindness, but as neglect. Inside the muscle, the machinery responsible for repair and renewal grows less sensitive with time. Amino acids, the building blocks of muscle, must reach a higher threshold before the body responds. Without that signal, muscle tissue remains in a state of quiet decay. This is why strength fades, even when body weight stays the same. Fat replaces muscle, energy becomes unreliable, and the immune system loses one of its greatest allies. Protein is no longer just a nutrient, it becomes a message, and without enough of it, the message never arrives. A useful way to understand this is to think of protein as the structural frame of a house. Walls, wiring, insulation, and furniture all depend on that frame being intact. Without it, nothing else holds. Energy dips, balance weakens, recovery slows. When protein is absent or delayed until late in the day, the body spends long hours without the materials it needs to stabilize itself. The result is not dramatic failure, but gradual collapse, a sense that everything is a little harder than it should be. This shift becomes strikingly clear when protein quietly reappears earlier in the day. People often describe feeling steadier, more alert, less shaky between meals, not energized in a jittery way, but grounded, stronger, as if the body finally received confirmation that it was allowed to maintain itself. Meals that once led to afternoon fatigue now produce calm, sustained energy. The difference isn't abundance, it's timing and structure. What's happening beneath the surface is a restoration of communication. Adequate protein at each meal helps overcome anabolic resistance, supporting lean mass, immune resilience, and metabolic stability. Blood sugar fluctuations soften, hunger becomes more predictable. The body stops searching for emergency fuel and begins operating with intention again. This is why people are often surprised by how quickly they notice a change. The physiology was waiting. It simply needed a clear signal. Over time, a pattern emerges. Meals anchored by sufficient protein feel more complete, even when portions remain modest. The plate no longer feels like filler arranged around empty calories. It feels purposeful, and with that purpose comes a quiet confidence in the body, one that many people haven't felt in years. Strength stops slipping away unnoticed. Energy becomes something you can count on again, not because the body became younger, but because it was finally fed in a language it still understands. Even when protein finally finds its place, something still feels incomplete for many people. Energy improves, strength steadies, yet digestion remains sluggish, inflammation lingers, and afternoons can still bring an unmistakable heaviness. This is where the conversation usually stops, and where most plans quietly fail, because fiber and fats are treated as secondary details, background noise in a discussion dominated by calories and protein totals. In an aging body, that oversight matters far more than anyone realizes. Fiber is not simply roughage, and fat is not merely dense energy. Together, they regulate how food moves, how blood sugar behaves, and how calm or chaotic the internal environment becomes after a meal. As years pass, insulin sensitivity declines and the gut becomes more reactive. Without enough fiber, glucose enters the bloodstream too quickly, triggering spikes followed by crashes that feel like fatigue, fog, or irritability. Without healthy fats, digestion rushes forward without control, hormones lose stability, and inflammation quietly intensifies. A helpful way to picture this is mechanical. Protein builds the engine, but fiber and fats keep it from overheating and stalling. Fiber slows absorption and feeds the gut microbiome, which in turn produces compounds that reduce inflammation and support metabolic health. Healthy fats act like lubrication, allowing hormones and cell membranes to function smoothly while extending the feeling of satisfaction after eating. When these elements are missing, the engine may exist, but it runs hot, noisy, and inefficient. This balance often reveals itself through subtle changes. Meals that once led to bloating, constipation, or sudden exhaustion begin to feel gentler. Energy stretches longer into the day without sharp peaks or crashes. The nervous system calms. People describe feeling more even, less reactive, more present in their bodies. These are not dramatic transformations, but deeply meaningful ones, signals that the internal rhythm is becoming more stable again. Patterns seen in long-lived populations offer a quiet confirmation of this effect. Meals built around vegetables, legumes, olive oil, nuts, seeds, and fish consistently support metabolic health without relying on restriction or excess. The emphasis is not on eliminating foods, but on structuring them in a way that respects how the aging body processes energy. Fiber and fats work together to create meals that are not just nourishing, but regulating. When this final piece falls into place, something important clicks. The body no longer feels like it's constantly compensating or recovering. It begins operating with efficiency and grace. Digestion supports energy instead of stealing it. Inflammation softens. The sense of heaviness that many people associate with getting older begins to lift. Not because of a trick or shortcut, but because the body is finally receiving the full spectrum of support it needs to function well at this stage of life. What becomes clear, once all the noise fades, is that lasting vitality has never been about clever hacks or short-term fixes. It has always been about structure. The body after 60 does not respond to extremes, restriction, or constant novelty. It responds to consistency. This is the quiet lesson echoed again and again in the world's longest-living communities, something Dan Buettner has observed across cultures. People who age well are not chasing youth. They are supporting their biology in the same calm, deliberate way every single day. When meals are built to feed muscle, steady blood sugar, and protect digestion, the body stops feeling like a problem that needs managing. Strength becomes something that stays instead of something that leaks away. Standing up from a chair feels natural again. Walking feels balanced and confident. Energy no longer needs to be borrowed from caffeine or willpower. It shows up because the system underneath is finally stable. This is what people mean when they say they feel younger. Not a return to the past, but a return to capability. There is a powerful emotional shift that accompanies this physical change. Independence feels protected. The fear of becoming fragile softens. Daily life becomes less about avoiding decline and more about participating fully. Meals stop being a source of confusion or guilt and become a quiet form of self-respect. Not indulgence, not restriction, just alignment with what the body now needs to remain strong. The most important realization is also the simplest. Nothing was broken. The strategy was incomplete. Eating like you did decades ago was never going to support a body that has changed so profoundly. Once the structure changes, the body responds with gratitude. Muscles hold on. Energy steadies. Digestion cooperates. Aging stops feeling like a slow surrender and starts feeling like a phase that can still be lived with strength and clarity. That is the real takeaway. Stop eating like you're younger. Start eating like you plan to stay strong.